To help you get a better understanding of how and why we annotate, I'm going to model for you the annotation of Romeo's first soliloquy in Act 2, Scene 2 of Romeo and Juliet. This is the scene commonly referred to as the balcony scene. One of the first things you want to do before you annotate a text is make sure you identify specific things you want to look for. For our purposes, we need to keep in mind the literary terms that we have already studied. So far this year, we've looked at mood and tone. We've looked at conflict. We've looked at figurative language and imagery. In regards to Romeo and Juliet, we've been paying attention to author's purpose, and we've been tracing the ideas of violence, love, lust, and more specifically and more recently, religion. That is what we examined in the scene which Romeo and Juliet first met. So I want to make sure that as I'm reading through this scene, this soliloquy, I'm paying attention for those things as well. So scene 2 starts off in Capulet's orchard. The following is one of the most famous scenes in all of literature. The speeches contain some of the most beautiful poetry Shakespeare ever wrote. Juliet appears on the balcony outside her room. She cannot see Romeo, who stands in the garden just below. Garden, if I'm thinking about religion, that's immediately going to take me to the Garden of Eden and to the idea of Adam and Eve. At the beginning of the scene, both characters are speaking private thoughts to themselves. This right here, speaking private thoughts to themselves, is how I know that this is what's called a soliloquy. That is the term used to define any time when a character speaks his or her private thoughts on stage. Romeo, however, can hear Juliet as she expresses her love for him despite her family name. So she knows that this is not a love that's going to be supportive. Eventually, he speaks directly to her, and they declare their love for each other. Just before dawn, Romeo leaves to make plans for their wedding. What? You gotta be kidding me. It's been less than 24 hours, and these two are already talking about getting married. What happened to Rosalind? Enter Romeo. He jests at scars that never felt a wound. Well, here we have a pronoun, so I need to try to figure out who he is. If I look over, I have some notes in my margins, and that answers my question. He is Mercutio. So this is saying that Mercutio is like making fun of Romeo for loving Juliet. Enter Juliet above at a window. Again, stage directions here are very important. Juliet is above Romeo. That kind of takes me back to her costume at the party, where she was the angel. She's higher than him. That has to be relevant. But soft. What light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Well, that's a metaphor. We've been looking at figurative language. And it's comparing Juliet to the sun. So what do I know about the sun? I know that the sun gives everything life. I know that we revolve around the sun. So maybe the same thing's going to happen in regards to Romeo and Juliet. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. Well, here's personification. Why would the moon be jealous of Juliet? Is the moon jealous of Juliet's beauty? Maybe. And the moon, who is already sick and pale with grief, that thou her maid art far more fair than she. That's the second use of the word fair within 3 lines. So what does it mean? Fair generally means beautiful or lovely. So Romeo is very stuck on the idea of Juliet's outer beauty. Be not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. It is my lady, oh, it is my love. Oh, that she knew she were. Romeo wants Juliet to know about his love. Should he tell her? Or should he keep it to himself? She speaks, yet she says nothing. How do people speak without saying words? That's easy. It's through the eyes, body language. That's how somebody speaks without saying words. Her eyes discourses. I will answer it. I am too bold. Romeo's got an internal conflict here. He's trying to say, should I tell her or should I not? I think we've all been there sometime. 'Tis not to me she speaks. 2 of the fairest stars in all the heaven, having some business, do entreat her eyes to twinkle in their spheres till they return. What if her eyes were there, they in her head? The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars as daylight doth a lamp. Again, how beautiful Juliet is. She is the light in the darkness. Her eyes in heaven would through the airy region stream so bright that birds would sing and think it were not night. There it is again. It's that same idea. Juliet's beauty lights up darkness. See how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek. Okay, well, that's just creepy. Romeo wants to be her glove. He just kind of wants to touch her cheek. Yeah, I don't know what to think about that. So that is an example of how I would go through and annotate Romeo's first soliloquy in this scene from Romeo and Juliet. Notice I've looked at literary elements. I've made connections to things I already know in the story. I ask questions and I define words. I also include my personal reactions. Annotating is a skill that is 100% personal. Everybody does it in different ways. The important idea is that we come up with a different understanding of a text than we would if we just did a simple read. You are now going to finish reading and annotating this scene for next class period. Be prepared for a quiz.